Welcome to the Gray Stage podcast number 14. Today we're going to cover chapter 8, which is pages 65 and 66 in the book. And the book is called The Gray Stage, authored by Greg Fernandez Jr. And once again, this is the March 1st episode number 14 for Gray Stage. My name is Dan Hennon. We're also joined today with Sophia, Stephen Sanzeri, and William Rail. Good, we got a good episode for today, and once again, those following along in the book, it's pages 65 and 66. A short chapter, it's chapter 8, and it's really these 2 pages is going to be more than enough for this podcast. There's a lot in this chapter, a lot of information. The agenda for today's podcast, we'll be starting off with the gun safe, then moving on to the drug deal, the bathroom, and then other items. And we've got a load of information here, so this is looking forward to this episode. A lot to cover here with the Crowley case. And all these things here, we're going to be talking about the master bedroom. And so we got the gun safe. It's not one of those big, large weapons safes, but it's just a tabletop one here. And for those watching here on the viewing, the images will be up here. I'll start reading here with this chapter. There were no immediate signs of any blood inside the master bedroom area, according to Detective Tommie Booth. The gun safe in the bedroom was open. Inside the safe was a loaded magazine with .40 caliber hollow point ammunition. The push keys on the gun safe were swabbed and labeled as item 38. Blood was not found on the push keys, but DNA results showed a mixture of 2 or more individuals. The major DNA profile belonged to a female, matching Komel. Even so, David and Raniya could not be excluded as possible contributors to the mixture. Who wants to start off here? William, maybe talk a little bit about this gun safe from what you're familiar with, and maybe move on to Stephen next.
Sure. So I actually got the exact model and everything. The actual buttons themselves on this model here, or on this exact one, they look like they're a little bluish. I mean, I could be seeing it a little differently. But I did find the model. It is a GV2000S. Get the exact thing. It's a gun vault, multi-vault handgun safe. And of course, lock type. It's a key lock. But the thing is, I was very curious about on this is I didn't see any information about how it was opened. I feel that's kind of going to play somewhat of a role in this because, well, if it was open with the keys, then it would be submitted in those combination. And if it was open with the actual key itself, then anybody could have done it. And I didn't see any information on that.
And another question, this is Dan, from the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group. One of the questions that did come up, and hopefully you both gentlemen could answer this, is the confusion on this image here on the left is 2 points. One is it one where you place your hand on there and the sensors sense who's doing it and automatically opens, or are those buttons that you press in a certain sequence that activate the safe to open? And the final question, is that a left or a right-handed? Does your hand have to be on there on your left hand, or is it your right hand? Or if it's just push buttons, why does it appear that it looks like fingers? Like a hand has to be laid up there for sensors. Those are the most common questions that come up on this. Can you relay some of that information back, either of you?
So, I mean, that's the thing. It's like when I'm looking at this, I mean, going off the information it's got on here, it's programmable access code. So I'm not really sure if it's sensors. It looked more like push buttons to me. Okay. So it would be like the actual, you'd actually have to push in the key code basically, and then it would open. Okay. Or at least unlock, and you could just basically just pull it out. But I didn't see anything about it actually being electronic in that sense. But it does have an actual electronic port you can see there too. So that's what I'm kind of curious about myself.
And like you said, if someone had the key, it would be irrelevant who gained access. It would just be the person who had the key.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
And the really weird thing about this is we see the keys in the right photo. We can see the keys clearly right there. So that's why I'm curious if basically, I feel like the police should kind of clarify this. Like, did they, check to see if it was open with the key lock or if it was open with just the buttons? If there's any way to even do that, really. I just found that really interesting because we don't know how it was opened. And I feel that's really relevant to the case because if it was open with key, anybody could have gotten in. And if it was
the keys that are photographed inside, are you saying that those are the keys that would have potentially opened up this safe? They would have had been in there, or those just a backup set of house and car keys in this safe? That was another question that came up several times.
Well, the thing is, like, you can see if I'm trying to think what photos. Let me bring it up real quick. It's a DSC 0427 photo. If you look at that one, it does look like the actual key itself to open it is on there. And it does have gunvault.com, like its little keychain on there as well. So I'm assuming that was the actual one.
Stephen may be able to help also. How common would it be for just a person in a home to have a hollow point ammunition, 40 caliber hollow point? I've heard of, I'm not a gun person myself, but hollow points I think of with drug gangs or gangs on the streets and people trying to kill and execute folks because it blows off their head essentially with a hollow point. This would not be something you'd use just for home defense, would it not?
You know what? That hollow point's the only way to go. If you shoot like fully jacketed ball ammo, like 45s, we shoot at the range. They have a tendency to go through more. They don't mushroom and expand, and flesh or bone and what have you will stop that more frequently. So in hollow points for self and home defense, it's the only way to go. Chances are it's not going to go through somebody and go through the wall and such as much as a fully jacketed round.
Okay.
Yeah, about the gun safe, guys. That you got a choice in that gun safe. Is it just use the key, or it's not a biometric where your fingerprints ID. It's a push button thing. But when you buy a safe like that, you can open the key, and or you can also program that little four button digital opening.
Okay.
So you can do it
very similar to a safe you'd find in a hotel room. One of those.
Right, exactly.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but biometric would be like fingerprint recognition.
Okay. That's what many of the questions we had on the Justice page early on when these photos first became available. Those of us not in the know looked at that. It looked like four fingers. You'd lay your hand right on top of there and it would open up. Only the right person would be able to open it because it looked like a biometric type of a thing. So we spent a lot of time answering questions like that when the members first joined the page. But really, it's just a series of push buttons is essentially a combination of push buttons.
Yeah, it's basically a keypad, yeah.
Okay.
That's what they call it.
Good to know. And so the assumption here for the newer listeners out there is that David kept his gun, this XD handgun, in this safe, and then it was the one found on the living room floor. And so the assumption is the gun that was used for these killings essentially came from here. It goes on to say that there was no blood found on the push keys, which would make sense because you would assume that no blood had taken place until that gun case was open and the gun was taken out to perform the killing. So there's nothing surprising there as far as no blood found on these push button keys. Is that a safe assumption? That's not a surprising fact, right?
No, I mean, I'd say going off the narrative, that would be totally how I would see it as well. But I mean, those keys though. That's the thing. That's leading me to believe this is just kind of opened just to make it look like that's what happened.
Oh, correct. Yes, I agree too. I'm one of I think the very few people that believe that the weapon found at the scene that was laying there had nothing to do with the crimes at all. It was just laid there. And so yes, if they went back to open this to lead down the police down that narrative, they had to first open up this key, this safe, to lead you to the illusion that this gun was tied to the safe. Therefore, it was David's. Therefore, David did it. Yada yada yada.
He also had guns elsewhere in the house. I mean, he had the ones in I think it was in his trunk. He had the ones downstairs. I don't know if those were all props or not, but I know he had multiple guns. So, I mean, who's to say? But not to mention, if you were to look at the damage from a hollow point, I mean, I've been going over this for quite a bit of time on this one. It doesn't add up. He'd have to get shot multiple times in the head for it to kind of, do what it did. And then also the whole thing of paleo doing it, whereas, I mean, we can get into that. I mean, we can go and expand from there, but it just doesn't add up.
So the major DNA profile belonged to a female, so it would have been Komel's fingers doing the push button combination on this, which would, I guess, make sense as well.
Do we know if did David teach her to shoot?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, then she went and got certified as well through a course and a class from Eric Peckheiser. So, but David was the main one, showing her the ropes and getting. And she actually had her own weapon at one point.
Yep.
The DNA test that they used on the gun safe was a Loki DNA test type. A locus is a specific physical location of a gene or other DNA sequence on a chromosome, like a genetic street address.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the only item in the house that had the specific test.
And that is a bit odd. So.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, especially if there's other things they could have used that on as well. There was other options. I mean, I don't even know of options off the top of my head, but there's plenty of other options they could have used for a lot of the swabbing and all this, and they didn't use those.
This is Dan. I have another last question on this. For the safe, it does appear like it's plugged in to a jack or a wall outlet, that black cord. What would that be for in this case? Is this electronic?
Yes. So basically, I mean, I just went over the specs again just to, refresh myself. So basically, this is there for, let me again. It's got a lockup mode apparently. So, and also it's using batteries for this. It's basically just for the lockup mode. That's what it looks like. And it does have a battery warning. It has what else? I mean, it's got all sorts of different things. But it's essentially that way. It's basically you can just it'll lock if somebody tries it enough times, and they just keep failing. It'll just lock.
Yeah,
it.
Greg's got the manual pulled up here now on the screen that shows it runs on AC power with the battery backup. Okay, Interesting.
You should still be able to open it with a key, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
But the actual push key part won't.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it won't work because you got to have the electricity running for that.
Okay. And this is not like a bioscan or anything like that, where it's scanned to somebody's fingerprints or anything like that. So, so all that to open this, all that somebody would need is just the combination or the actual key.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Komel's DNA is on that. David's couldn't be excluded, but in the same case as Raniya's couldn't be either. The likelihood of Raniya, being the one to open it is very unlikely. So because of that, and the major profile being a female, it seems highly unlikely that maybe even David opened this.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, my takeaway on this is that I still go back to them being held hostage. It was some time. She may have ran over there to pull a gun out and just didn't quite get to it or pull it out. And the freshest DNA is they're going to pick that up, of course. But she, there's no blood on those keys or anything. This is prior to her being attacked or touching her husband or her daughter with blood or anything else. So she may have tried to go get that gun.
Yeah.
Or if the murderers knew they needed to murder the family and make it, have David be the culprit, they needed to get in, so they could have ordered her to open it, or ordered him to open it, or got the combination to open it themselves and obviously wiped it down afterwards, or was wearing a glove at the time because no one else's fingerprints are on there. But police go out of their way to say that there's DNA on the push button to gain access to that code. Did they ever tap the actual key itself to see who used that key to open it?
Just look, nobody did. There was no
one
testing on it at all.
To me, that would be your thing you'd want to be looking at from a detective is not only the push button access combination, but the key to gain access to the safe. If the killers had the key and just simply open it up, now obviously they'd be wearing gloves or they would have wiped it down anyway, but was any research done as to the fingerprints or any kind of latent prints on those keys? That's where your investigation needs to take that next level, which we know that the Apple Valley group here did not take that extra level in any one of these scenarios. So
they got awarded them, man. They got awarded them, remember? Great job, guys.
Great job.
Well, they don't even mention if they found these keys either, right? So that's not mentioned. Here's an image of the actual keys that should be somewhere. So it would be curious to see, because we know there's several sets of keys throughout that house, and I wonder if these were part of any of the keys that were found in that house.
You can see it on the photo I was telling you about earlier. Okay. The ones that are inside the gun vault, you can actually see it. Yeah, it is directly right there.
Oh, really? So the key is inside the gun vault, is what you're saying?
Yep.
Sorry,
and it says right there in the instruction manual, never put those keys in because of the risk of locking them in. And there they are, nicely portrayed here on the upper shelf of the safe. So clearly this is a staged thing. Is it not?
Oh, they even moved them around too.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, a lot of moving around.
And that's just a removable shelf in there, is it not?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't even see their little gun vault logo or anything. They don't even have the keychain in there. It doesn't look like. They got it. It's on the DSC 0427.
So David, he's very vigilant, and being in the service, and maybe things he was sensing, he would do the combination on the four keys, and wouldn't have his key in there, obviously, not, and it's a lot faster than that if you lose the key. So my guess is that he already had a program just, for the programming on the push buttons. And I think that's how it works. We want to get to the weapon fast.
And then he would have shared that combination with Komel, or would there be two combinations? One for the husband, one for the wife?
No, I believe there's just one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be one. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're moving the keys again.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. But yeah, you're right. There it is, right there. You can clearly see that it's in. What the hell? Why would you put it inside?
Yeah.
You even got the logo, the keychain.
Yeah. Just really trying to go on. Hey, this is what happened here.
It did come with two keys. I think that's the second one in the back right there too. I think they're both on there. Huh.
I mean, I've had gun safes, guys, and they have a key and then they have a 4-digit dial. I never ever put the key inside my gun safe. There's no way.
Yeah. I mean, if we can get a hold of a picture of maybe Komel's keys, I would guess it's probably there with her.
Any input from you, Sophia, on this image?
Just that it was odd that it was left open like that, and that the keys are still in there. That's, to me, this whole entire crime scene is staged. Everything about it.
Everything is.
Oh, yeah. I think the only room that doesn't have any connection to the crime scene itself is Raniya's, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked and I didn't see anything in there. I mean, kids leave their doors open. I got 2 kids. They both do it. I mean, maybe not my daughter as much as, her brother, but still, for the most part, kids that's what they do. They leave their doors open. So I feel like that part is not even staged. I feel like that's just kids being kids.
What about the kitchen counter? Was there anything where it looked like David had emptied his pocket?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff there. I don't know if there was a key set part of that. Yeah, there is actually.
It looks like it, yeah.
DSC 0044. Can't tell whose keys they are, obviously, but yes, there is a set of keys there, and I don't see anything that would match that key. These are car keys too. Hmm.
Looks like a car in a house.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what that silver thing is. Maybe a flashlight or something, or like a tool, which would make me think it's probably David's.
Yeah.
And of course, she probably has a purse, so...
That looks like a laser pointer, actually.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
That's pretty interesting.
I mean, they laid everything out in just a way that it's like, well, they got his bloody phone. I mean, it's all clearly like set up on purpose to make it look this way. So that way, it just kind of like what Dan was saying earlier, kind of just like the police kind of show up and just like, oh, it's already solved for us. Basically, we know who did this. Just kind of laying it out as much as possible. So that way, it's just kind of run in and then just run out. I mean, they only took a day for it, which is odd, anyways.
Right. How nice of them.
Right?
All laid out for you right here, no problem.
Lazy detective work.
Just stop asking questions and say that he's guilty.
Right? Totally a suicide.
Everything's been spoon-fed to you.
So we are going to have the manual out there if anybody wants to take a look at it. It's about 15, 16 pages. I'll make sure that I put that on my website. Maybe we can add that into our group files too, just so people can if they want to know exactly what this gun safe is, what it does, what it can't do, because there's been a lot of different theories and different thoughts about that gun safe, and I do hope this kind of clears up a lot of that stuff here. So.
Yeah, I'll even throw up on a Discord so that way people want access to it there as well.
Excellent. Yes, it's good to get this stuff and all these documents, man. We need everybody. Anyone listening or watching this, please make sure that you feel free to take these documents, put them somewhere, because you just never know. You never know. It's good to have all these documents in as many places as possible. So, I want people to feel free to take these documents and to do whatever you want with them. Use them to call me crazy. Now, this is an interesting one. Unless anybody else has anything on the safe, I want to move on to the magazine that was in that safe.
Mm-hmm.
If this is the magazine that was in, I do believe this is the magazine that was in that safe, because that was another question too. If you look at it in these images here, it looks like it's black, but I think it's just a reflection off of that.
No, it definitely is.
Right.
Definitely is.
So you can see here, this is and we had talked about this, Dan, because this was part of the first 464 images that we got, and so I thought that this was the magazine inside of the gun, which made no sense, because then how the heck is there? This many shots, but
just to fill in the newer listeners here, when the images first came out. And I admit I was part of this as well by saying this was the magazine used at the crime scene, and the number of bullets missing out of this didn't match up with the number of casings found at the scene. And then folks reminded us and says, this was the magazine found in the safe, had nothing to do with the one found in the living room. So there was some, we circled back a couple times with that with a bunch of confusion. People at the time were claiming that we were pushing disinformation and misinformation and everything else. But just to clarify, this is the magazine that was found in the safe. Had nothing, as far as we know, had to do with the crime. This is not the magazine from the gun in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
So correct.
Right.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and one of the big reasons that we thought that is because this was the only image of a magazine that we got. We did not, in the first 464 photos, we did not get a photo of the actual magazine that was pulled out of the gun found at that crime scene, which did have blood on it and did have fingerprints on it.
Yep.
So that was odd.
And this one looks like, Stephen could help out too. It looks like this was laid on a countertop, perhaps even back at the Apple Valley Police Department office, somewhere where they laid everything out and took photographs of each side, the front, back, and things like that. So this was not the one. But yes, it did cause confusion because there was no images made available of the magazine that was used in the gun, of the Springfield gun, in the living room. So people put two and two together and thought that this was the one that was discovered. They're like, well, how could there be 6 casings found and there's still, 10 or 11 bullets here in the magazine? And so that led to a whole bunch of other confusing jargon here, as far as people calling this a cartridge, someone calling this a magazine, someone calling this a clip. And so we spent the first, several months, I think, Greg, just going over the definition because folks were getting those things wrong. Stephen, could you clarify some of the jargon, some of the verbiage here for the listeners that are non-gun enthusiasts?
Yeah, it's called the proper terms magazine on this here, and a clip is something like more or less like clips refer more to rifles, like a stripper clip used to be. They comes through the top. Magazines more terms toward the rifles, AR-15s, but it could be interchanged, but with proper terminology, magazine. The other thing is David, probably a pretty good, really great, probably a weapons aficionado. He usually have 2 magazines, but when it only has, what's it look like? It looks like it has maybe 11 rounds. You never, if a magazine's going to sit for a while, you never want it full capacity because it'll collapse the spring if it sits too long, and so it won't feed properly. So he's keeping one out of there. I used to keep 2 out of there at a large capacity. Leaves the spring a little bit looser, and it won't compress and it won't feed. Yeah, it won't jam. So that's why he's smart. He'd never have it loaded all the way to full capacity if it's laying around for a while.
Okay. Good to know. And he would have loaded these himself, so his fingerprints and his touch DNA would be on each of these bullet casings. Okay.
Yeah, you'd have a thumb. Usually it's a thumb thing, unless he had an automatic little tool he can load them with. I doubt that. He's old school. And Komel could have, shooting. She could have loaded it too, also.
Okay. Yeah. Good. This helps.
Yeah. Now, is there any reason not to test this one, or not to make this, item whatever 2025 or something? Why not itemize this one and why not test it?
Sure. There's going to be prints on that. There's going to be prints on that magazine.
Oh yeah, it was clearly used anyways.
Yeah, sure is.
The only thing I can think that would, is that they didn't test the other guns either. They didn't print the other guns, but this one was found at the actual crime scene. The other guns were mostly in his basement. This was, if this was supposed to be tied to the weapon that was used in that house, I just still don't understand why they didn't label it and why they didn't test it. If they're not going to test, because there's many items that they didn't test, but at least label it. It seems very, very relevant.
No, it absolutely is.
Yeah, they wrapped this thing up quickly and just said he did it, and no reason to test anything else. When in fact, it looks to me, there's going to be possibly, somebody else's prints on there, and yeah.
Well, even then, the lab could also use the DNA found on this magazine, and they can cross-reference it with the other one to actually go and confirm DNA. So they could do that, and they clearly didn't do that either.
Yeah, and I don't see. I'm looking at. It's hard to tell if they've even dusted this thing or tried to even pull anything off of it. It's hard to tell. No powder, no fingerprint powder on it.
They took it from the crime scene, right? I don't know if they photographed this at the crime scene, but they photographed it, but not label it. I'm gonna have to check the evidence and property file to see if they did actually label this as something, or if it's listed somewhere. Because it might be. I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, it should have a tag next to it.
Something.
Yeah.
The way they can kind of itemize it. So
these are hollow points, right?
Yeah, you can tell by looking at the front of the bullet. You can see that.
If this magazine was full, is this what it would look like, or do you think that there was maybe one missing from it?
There's one missing from it. Sure. It's number 12.
If you look at number 4, if that also looks blank too, that was another weird one. How is
it definitely does. I can't answer that one because it's a side stack when it goes in, so we should see number 4. I thought the same thing.
And like Stephen was saying, because it's spring-loaded, if we see the ammunition is in 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and 5, obviously there's one in 4 too, you just can't see it. But it's clearly nothing in 12 is what Stephen's saying, and then you purposely leave one empty or 2, correct? There'd be no way for nothing to be in 4. There'd be no way for 4 to be empty, is that correct?
Right, exactly. The other thing too is, remember we had an unspent round in the living room. Okay, and so did that come off of here? Did they put it back? Like I said, I think that somebody either, wasn't familiar with the weapon, and they just went ahead and then pulled the slide back, instead of checking, and they expended a live round onto the ground.
Unless there's anything else on the magazine, we can move on to the next topic here.
All right, the topic is The Drug Deal, starring Chris Peck.
Great title. I love it.
This one starts off by saying, the gun safe and the weed on the dresser were 2 more indications of a scene interrupted. Within days of finding the bodies, authorities were informed of, quote, a possible drug deal, end quote, between David Crowley and his friend Chris Peck. Peck told authorities he was not David's drug dealer, considered David a mentor when it came to film production. According to Detective Booth's report, quote, Mr. Peck went on to describe that he has known David and Komel for several years and had traveled to Oklahoma with David and Daniel Mason and Mitch Heil to help film scenes for the Gray State Concepts trailer back in March of 2013. The group had traveled to Oklahoma where a lot of the filming was done. Mr. Peck stated that he has worked on and off with David on the project of Gray State. Where do we want to start here, folks? The weed, or Chris Peck, or the photographs?
I mean, they're both kind of interchangeable at this point. If we think about it with Chris Peck, he did lie to the police, because in the police reports, basically he saying he was not David's drug dealer, but he was selling David some pot. So, there's that. So. What is it, Peck?
What
are you the dealer or are you not?
If I sell somebody, weed once, am I their dealer? I guess would be the question. How many times would I have to sell it to you in order for me to become your dealer?
Exactly. But the thing is, if he was going over to go and buy pot from him, chances are he's probably done it before. I think it's a fair assumption.
Sure. My question is, who's the informant of a possible drug deal? How all of a sudden, how are they informed? That could be a bunch of BS. Here, all of a sudden says, hey, these guys are buying weed from this guy Peck, and why all of a sudden? Who informed them of that? My second part of the question is, what are the marijuana laws in Minnesota?
Great question, Dan.
Illegal. There wasn't medical marijuana back then, so it was outright illegal. I'm not sure any other, specifics other than that. All I know is that the photograph on the left, it shows the open container with the tweezers, and then the package on the right with the Ziploc, it's flipped over, but it's labeled with a Sharpie AK-47. That was the strand, that was the name of it. So is there any connotation from you guys as far as that? Would that ever be the case, leaving it open with a 5-year-old daughter in the house, or is that also staged to make it look like this guy was just aloof?
Yeah, the thing on the left.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead, Stephen.
The thing on the left that's a grinder, right? That's a grinder for your weed, and then the AK-47 is a strain of weed, which is very powerful for weed.
Yeah, but that doesn't look like California. In California, I wouldn't call that an AK-47. Is it?
No, I'd call that no offense, Greg. That looks like Mexican weed to me.
It looks like Bammer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it really does. I'm in San Diego, and in the old days they had a lot of that coming over the border, and it was is all stems and seeds.
And that would make sense, especially if, you know, they can't, there's not that many people that can get to it, but obviously David knows who to go to if he needs weed. It's also very small. I mean, how much could this bag fill? I know I have it zoomed in here, but maybe $20-$30, you know, maximum. I can't, it doesn't seem like there's that much in it.
No, we don't, you know, how much did he smoke, or, you know, I mean, maybe there's some weed elsewhere he's hiding it, but he definitely wouldn't leave that out with his daughter around.
Right.
Well, my question is, see, if he's got his bong and everything in the bathroom, why not just keep it all together? You know, I mean, it seems logical. It's out of the way. It'd be out of reach for Raniya. You know, he's also got his pipe over on his, like, right below the gun safe. You know, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, it would, you know... It would be, yeah, I would see that. You wouldn't have it all over the place. You'd have it in one spot or put away in one spot. You wouldn't have it all over, you know, the pipe here, the bong here, the weed over here, you know.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's the thing I kind of an issue with as well, is, like, I mean, he's a parent. He's obviously a pretty responsible parent, pretty devoted to his family. I mean, he's not going to leave this out. You know? Yeah,
and if it, like Dan said, it was a felony back then, you're definitely not going to leave it out. I mean, that's, you know, you're going to hide it from authorities. That's, you know, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, especially considering the topics he's going on and looking at. You know, I mean, who's to say the police wouldn't just jump in? I mean, we've heard of cases before where police, you know, like somebody's looking into something and police end up, you know, going after that person for some random charge. Or random assumption, rather. You know, just to find that that person wasn't guilty.
Well, that's why I don't see marijuana coming off the feds as a Schedule 1, because that's the last thing to get into your house for probable cause.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's
exactly.
My view. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just all basically there to kind of just stack all these things against him to show you the stoner.
Sure.
You know, I mean, in places where it's illegal, I mean, let's be honest, you get kind of the more old school people, like those like the reefer madness kind of thing. Those are the people that are like, you know, oh, you know, weed does all these bad things. I mean, me personally, I've done it before a few times. I'm not a fan of it, but it's one of those things. It doesn't do much. I mean, it's relaxing essentially.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we're in California. I mean, I used to have a medical marijuana card years ago, and you know, it was fine, but. You know, if it's a bust there, leaving it out, everything else. And, hey, you know, and this stuff here, from what I can see, and I used to be around a lot of marijuana in my day, professionally and friends and everything, this stuff doesn't look like it's very strong.
Yeah.
Now, just to jump in here from someone from the Midwest here, this is Dan, that right away the neighbors and the I guess not family and friends, but people on the justice page here saw the weed, and here it's very common to say, oh my God, he was on weed, the guy's a drug dealer, he obviously went mad and killed his family. They don't know from talking from the folks on the East and West Coast to say this is, number one, it's harmless, number two, you would never go on a killing spree after smoking weed, and number three, by looking at it, this looks like very weak stuff, not powerful. Well, that doesn't come into play in the Midwest. The Midwest is, oh my God, he's a freaking stoner. What the hell's wrong with him? He's obviously guilty. And so I think this was laid out knowing how the public would perceive it and call him guilty on it without doing the homework to say that, was it even his? Was it just laid out? Did he buy any weed? Did he actually go to Peck's house that day? You know, we don't know if any of this is true.
Right.
We don't know if any of this is true. So but the family and friends and neighbors here that I have in the area all thought too, well look, you see the weed, you see the gun, he's obviously was smoking dope, which means he's a big time druggie. That's what the connection is here in the Midwest. That's the connotation. That's what we're dealing with here. It's not very very common. And I would say, by looking at it, David probably was a recreational marijuana user. Not a big time, not a small time, but obviously maybe once a month grabbed a bag like this, and him and his wife enjoyed it. I saw nothing wrong with it at all. But I think it was there more for the shock value and to lay they lead down the investigators level 1 investigator 101 course to say David did it because all that leads to it. You get all this paraphernalia in the basement, this anti-gun weapons and this militia kind of stuff. Yeah, staged, not staged, but the inventory from his garage sale all makes it look like the guy's part of a militia movement nutcase. Yeah, conspiracy nutcase. You know, so there you go. 24 hours, lock deal done.
Yeah, and the other
the
thing is that
here believed it. You know, they all went with it. It was a very easy sell to the public.
You're spot on. The other thing too is, if they really wanted to stage this, I would have brought in some weight. You know, I brought in a pound and a half of weed and laid it out like he's a drug dealer and they have guns and everything else. He's not a casual recreational user. Or I would have brought in, planted some coke or meth or something in there. Really amp it up. But the thing is that that little bag right there and it's marked AK-47 and such. There's no weight here. There's no this guy's obviously not a drug dealer either. But that's what if I was going to stage it, I would have put some weight with some weed in there. So look, this guy was a major drug dealer. Somebody came in that deal or whatever. So no, it's not reefer madness. That's for sure.
Right.
God,
Yeah, it's definitely odd. Just like I said before, I think it was all basically kind of just shock value.
Yeah.
I mean, even Dan confirmed it. People were just automatically like, oh, he did it. But it's like,
yeah.
But did he really? I mean, who cares that he was smoking a little dope or a little pot? I shouldn't say dope. It's not dope. But
yeah.
He smoked a little pot. Who cares? Look what he went through. He was over in the Middle East. So regardless we go with the PTSD theory or not, regardless, the one thing we know that, once again, this is according to Mitch Heil, so it's just kind of just an alleged thing, he would bring up that one incident. So even if he had it, it's still the fact that, I know that Sophia and I have talked about this, where if he was really having that PTSD and it was all based on that event, then could he be able to actually make the movie he was making? You look at some of the trailers, you see explosions, gunfire, that would trigger him most likely. And clearly it didn't.
It would trigger him.
So, that's my point with it, is so he's not getting triggered, so I would already just kind of go on a limb and say he didn't have PTSD. He's just basically, this is just something to kind of, calm him down. It was a stressful situation. So, I could see something kind of coming back a little bit and be like, oh man, this is my life. Crap. I need to kind of relax a little bit. I get it. Not to mention the topic he's looking at is really dark. Looking at police state, looking at, Freemasons, all sorts of these other things. It's dark. Anybody who was on, I know I had a conversation, I want to say it was on the Facebook page, with a person who was just basically saying, oh, I look up dark stuff all the time. I don't go down that path. I've looked up this stuff. It takes me to a dark place, and I have to take a step back from it.
Oh, man, it's terrible.
So, that's why I would already assume anybody that's looking into this kind of stuff, if it doesn't take you to a dark place, you're not really digging well enough. Or you already know.
No, you're not. Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is, I've done some television stuff like that, and, in California, it's always this cocaine with all these crazy, nuts, but weed, he's a creative guy, he relaxes, takes his mind off things, and I can see him, writing a script or screenplay and smoking a little weed, and, there's a lot of artists that do that. It's not a big deal. It's part of what they do, or you got Hemingway and these guys that were boozers, or Jack London, they, died at 38 years old because of booze, or, so, it's a hell of a lot safer, better for you, and, nobody's hitting liquor stores and getting in bar fights because of weed,
Right.
That stigma's there, and yes, Dan's right. This was definitely made to put a, shed some, dark light on the guy that he was a crazed PTS, guy and stuff. So, he used it for creativity probably too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because this weed being out there doesn't really line up with anything that we are being told about what David did, that he just snapped, he went into this dark place, he walked up behind his daughter, his wife, and shot them. There have been many stories, many different theories, none of them that really pan out, none that you're really going to find. Once you start actually researching this, you're never going to find any of that. It's just all speculation and stuff, but none of that really matches from seeing these photos. It doesn't line up. It looks like they were doing something somebody knocked on their door, and something very, very bad happened here. That's the way that I would interpret looking at this here. Even with these tweezers too, it's like there's style to this. There's an art form to this. There's a reason why David would use a grinder as opposed to just using scissors and just chopping it up. You know, there's a method to all of this. This isn't somebody going crazy. If you're going crazy, you're not gonna take the time, which takes time, to grind this stuff up. Use tweezers, put it into this thing, and then use it, which we don't see. So, looking at that pipe that you talked about, that was underneath the gun safe, which is flipped. So there obviously was no weed in that pipe there, in the little glass pipe. Looking at the bong, doesn't really look like there's anything in there too. It looks like they had a whole system. They had stems that they would clean out, and so there's no weed there. I don't even know if they had, and because the big important thing, I don't even know if I mentioned this actually in this book, but in the toxicology reports, there was no weed found in there, so he may have never even smoked this yet. He had planned on it. I think we know that. There was intent to smoke weed, but you know, just like Bill Clinton, he did not inhale, from what all these things point to here.
That's right. That's right.
That's not some giant.
It also ties in, I think, with later on the story with the hallucinogens and seeing things and having visions, and with what he was introducing Komel to. I think it ties in as a gateway or a bridge to connect to that deeper stuff with the mushrooms and whatnot. And so they make this conveniently laying here to say, once again, done deal. And I don't know. I know, Greg, that you believe that they were interrupted with something. I think that this was a stage, and I think that this was open and laid out purposely to make it look like that. But I think even though if you are right that they were interrupted with this, it's got nothing to do with the crime itself. Whether him and Komel were smoking it that day or not, or even went to pick it up that day or not, this has nothing to do with the triple homicide in Apple Valley, the weed whatsoever. So I think that's the case. The next thing, we get down to the thing with you guys had asked earlier, how did they know weed was involved? How do they know that Chris Peck was the weed dealer? I think it comes up in the next sentence. Regarding the alleged drug deal, Detective Booth continued, quote, "The text message was sent at 7:22 a.m. on December 19th, 2014. David allegedly contacted Chris Peck asking, 'Do you have any?' Arrangements were then made for David and Komel to go to Chris Peck's residence. And that's in Minneapolis, by the way. After receiving this information from Detective Shane Klokonos, Detective Tommie Booth immediately contacted Chris Peck for more information. Peck stated David and Komel came by his residence to pick up a, quote, small amount of marijuana on December 19th, 2014. That was the last time Peck saw David and Komel. The Crowleys had wished him a Merry Christmas and a safe trip, Booth reported. 2 days later, Peck stated that he went to Iowa for Christmas. So, lots of information here. My first question is, when they pull the records, the text records, they'll know the date and time stamp, correct, Stephen, with the December 19th, 7:22. But would it say, do you have any? Would they actually have that? The documentation from the cell phone company, they would actually have the text, wouldn't they?
No,
the documentation's not there from the cell phone company.
Right.
This
This will be off of his phone, because what as far as I know is your texts are like emails. They can't go back and pull those.
They just pull the time and the date stamp, not the actual.
Yeah.
I see.
Correct. Yeah.
But they had David's phone, so if they were able to access his phone, then they should have been able to access all of his text messages, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we have to come off the phone. Yeah.
Usually
okay, but here's the deal. This text was never sent from his phone. It's not there in any of the phone records.
That's correct.
You look at his PDF stuff from the AT&T, it's not there.
So where did
there was no text sent.
So where did the Detective Shane Klokonos Klokonos, where did he get that information from then? I think Stephen had already mentioned that.
That's a very good question.
Where is it coming from?
I would
keep
guess
in
it's
mind-
probably
An
from an informant, probably. As somebody just trying to go get the information and steer it in the direction they want it to.
Keep in mind, Detective Shane Klokonos was just recently awarded a new promotion and an award at the Apple Valley Police Department. I think it was just last month. Was he not?
He was.
Yeah.
So that's just a side note, but go on.
You don't get most phone companies can only access texts for so many hours and they disappear even on their site. All they can have a timestamp and when it was sent, but they're not. There's no database holding your exact text. That's why a lot of people, they text and it disappears. If you get rid of your phone, there's no record of actually what you said. They can't have that. They don't have that on most of the systems.
They did have a search warrant that could have searched for all types of apps, like what is that one, WhatsApp or whatever, where you could send text or do calls.
Skype.
But they never mention anything. They never show screenshots, or they don't mention other calls being made, or that there was other apps being used.
Mm-hmm.
That information's not there, but they have that capability, and they had the legal right to search for it.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have that information. No, nothing at all.
They had David's cell phone. They had his computer.
Yeah,
they had all that information, or they had all the electronics, but we don't have anything from the police saying, hey, yeah, we did that, and this is what we came up with, and here's a screenshot of it, like they do of his messages through Messenger, or Komel's text messages to our friends, or emails even. They included all of that, but they did not include this one text.
Yeah, that goes back to...
That's very important. I think
I go back...
Go ahead, Stephen.
I'm sorry. I go back to who was the informant that, with information that there was a drug deal. I mean, who's that person? Who made that call to say, oh, there's a drug deal here? And that goes on to go ahead and discredit David also. It sounds like it was, more of a drug deal than just buying a little weed kind of thing,
And then why would Chris Peck go along with it if that never happened?
Exactly. Yes.
And so when the police report first came out, when we received that this happened, I think most people bought it hook, line, and sinker that that's probably what did happen. But then when Sophia received the phone actual activity on that cell phone, smartphone activity messages, and then we went, and she went on to prove that there was nothing on December 19th, much less at 7:22 a.m. of a text going anywhere from David's phone. What brought into question was, did this ever even take place? And so that's where we are now for the newer listeners out there, that there was no Chris Peck, hey, do you have any, so I could come by and pick it up at your Minneapolis apartment. The only thing we have is the actual phone records that show that actually prove that this did not take place. Yep. And then we don't know where Chris Peck actually lived on the police report. What he provided police was a P.O. box in Marion, Iowa. Now, Stephen, how common would it be for someone to give your residence as a P.O. box to the authorities?
You're not, if it's a mail annex, like a UPS annex or something like that, like I pay for a business annex, I can consider that actually a physical business address. As far as home address and such, no. I mean, you give them a physical address, not you don't live in a PO box.
Well,
but why did why did the Apple Valley Police Department think that was okay to just take that answer and type it in, and now it's in the police reports? Wouldn't they have pushed back to say, sorry, buddy, we can't take a P.O. box for your residence. So
sure,
what is it? Or you can always leave it blank as well, correct?
Yeah, also, to get those P.O. boxes, they want a physical address, but you would ask them up front instead of taking one more step and, going, and matching up at the P.O. box place, whether it's, U.S. mail or annex, that they didn't get a card that says, oh, this is where the guy physically lives. No, you'd ask them, and unless you live in a box or maybe you live in a motel or something, But you'd have a physical address somewhere attached. And if it's not, if you are homeless or something, and ask for next of kin for the closest address too.
And so, with all the witnesses here in the 94-page police report from Apple Valley, Chris Peck is the only one that provided detectives with a P.O. box for his address. And that's actually a P.O. box where his mother lived in Iowa, and it clearly states that he was residing in Minneapolis, Minnesota at a home, and we never did get that address anywhere, which is, the whole thing is strange. Nonetheless. Now, we do know that on the 19th of December was the last day of school for Raniya before the Christmas break, and they did go to pick her up around 3 o'clock. So the allegation that in the meantime they went to Chris Peck's home at around 1 p.m. to pick up the weed, makes sense. But we still don't even know if that was even true, if any of this stuff is true.
Well, I'm sorry to be redundant. I just go back to within days of finding the bodies, authorities were informed of a possible drug deal. This is post-10. Oh, the possible drug deal after they found the bodies. So all of a sudden, there you go, Dan, is, they're putting culpability on him being a drug dealer or whatever, but possible drug dealer after they found the bodies. I mean, who does that? I mean, that just, it doesn't make sense to me, No,
I think that was just used once again, kind of like how the gun safe was, just to kind of give like a clear story to the people, so that way nobody's going to start digging.
Right. Exactly.
Do you guys think that they would have, police back in 2014 would have used David's cell phone to see if it would have pinged, to see the physical location of that phone, to see if it actually was in Minneapolis? For those not familiar, that's about a 20-minute drive from Apple Valley. Would detectives have gone that far to say, look, let's prove that you were actually there? I'm assuming no. But could they have the opportunity to do that? Well,
so yes, I know for a fact they would have done this, because they did this. Are you guys familiar with the Kyron Horman case that occurred here? The missing child. Okay, so he was a missing child. Long story short, they pinged the crap out of the cell phones to go and see, to actually track the stepmom. And the thing is, she was going in and out of service. And all sorts of other things. She was literally all over the place for that one. So, that was back in 2010. So, this being 2015 and everything. Even going back and just tracking the cell phone in 2014, they would have been able to do that, no problem.
Would there have been an extra fee or a charge that the law enforcement would have declined then to save money?
Honestly, I think it was just a little bit more, well, it's not very expensive to do. Most of us could probably do it ourselves, just using simple programs on Google and stuff. We can actually go back pretty far with it. But with the police, they've got technology we aren't even, we don't technically have access to. So, it shouldn't be too expensive. They've already got the machines. They can just go and just basically run it. It wouldn't take very long to do.
And if you look at the phone records, you'll see that they have GPS on his phone records, and he never even left his little area, not since November.
Is that correct? Okay, that's very important. Wow.
So, and I need to go back and look at Komel's, but I'm pretty sure that Komel didn't leave her area.
Well, now that we're talking
I need to double check it.
Records, if you look at her phone records, now there's a really, really weird part I saw when I was looking through, and that was just now. There was a usage on, and this is in January in 2015, on the 8th, 11th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. And it looks like it's outgoing. A lot of it is.
Yeah, the cops need a warrant to ping a phone in a case like this. And what I'm looking up now, which I didn't know, they can ping back to 5 years. So back then maybe not. Now they can't. But they could ping back the locations based on GPS. And those phone records are held by AT&T and Verizon and such. So they can go back 5 years to see where you're at.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
which they did have all of that. So yeah, I'm glad that we have those records, because if we didn't, I'd still be thinking that everything that is mentioned here, that a Chris Peck story is all true, and we're kind of finding out that, wait a minute, how do we know if any of this is true? Why doesn't it match up with what these documents show? Maybe there is a reasonable explanation, but it's not matching up, and there's no mention of it.
Absolutely.
Why even contact Chris Peck? What was the main reason? Because Chris Peck was one of the last people to see them. We have a lot of people that are saying David was holding Komel captive, that he wasn't letting her out, he wasn't letting her do anything during this time. And we have at least a couple different facts here that show that she was out there. She was out in public with David.
Yep.
She was out in public without David during all of this time. It doesn't match up with this whole theory that David was this controlling person, blah, blah, blah. And so it's just, it's just the more that you look into it, if you take the time to look into this, the more that you see what they're telling us just does not add up and doesn't make sense. And we just need some more follow-up.
So something else we can also refer to is that the emails between Allison and Komel.
Yes.
That was on the 21st, sure, but like she talked about when she was talking to, replying to the reply, of course, from Allison. Allison was kind of like, being a little pushy. Well, why haven't you guys kind of, talked to Mom or whatever? Well, she goes into it and actually says, well, we're dealing with some stuff right now. And I don't remember the exact quote off the top of my head, but it's something along the lines of like, basically as lovers, as parents, as a couple, the kind of thing. They're dealing with all sorts of issues. They're really, really deep issues. So once again, she was very open, and she also admitted that she's also screening calls from out of state. She admits that in the same email, which means that does technically confirm she was actually screening her calls from her folks. So, I mean, to me, that's like, okay, well, there's some confirmation of this was actually occurring, but it was by choice. It wasn't like David was holding her back. He wasn't. And she even confirms, if anything, I would argue she ran the house. She also admits she was the breadwinner in her journal. But she ran the house, is what it kind of came off as. And if she's running the house, how controlling is David really then? If she's running the house.
Great question.
So that's my whole thing there. It's like I don't buy that theory at all. I mean, it doesn't add up. Just looking at it, like you'll get anybody that's going to come from a psych background, they'll tell you the same thing. That's clearly not a controlling person. They're not running the household. They're not controlling everything. Therefore, they're not really controlling the whole situation then. Which David, he was just kind of in his own world. He wanted to get his stuff done. We went over the psych profile last night. I'm sure you probably recall. Looking at David being that commander profile, the ENTJ. Yeah, ENTJ. And that's the thing. It's all about control. But he's also he's on a mission. So when he's doing something, it's just focus it down. But he also controlling the situation. But Komel was clearly like-minded. Everything with them is very, very cohesive. Even the way they're raising their daughter. I mean, if you look at it, for instance, those people with kids and everything, we see this too, especially with kids going to preschool, kindergarten. First thing what teachers mention, either they're going to mention, oh, your kid's really smart, or oh man, your kid's really athletic, or they, really energetic. They mention just a trait generally, maybe two at most, but generally it's just one trait. They just really focus on that. Oh, your kid's doing really well in this area. Well, what's the one thing they said about Raniya? Very, very intelligent, very bright. So, obviously, him being that commander trait, we went over it a lot, obviously, but the whole thing with basically covering that, David and Komel were molding her to really build up her intellect. So, this is them controlling everything, to a T, but it definitely came off Komel was really running, the whole house. That's her thing. So.
Great point.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to bring that up. So again, we know that according to the phone records, there was nothing there. There were no calls or text messages made to or from that phone on December 19th, 2014. So how did the Detective Klokonos discover the existence of a text message from David Crowley to Chris Peck? And I think you guys have done a great job of pretty much labeling that and kind of going through that. So unless you have any final thought, unless anybody has any final thoughts on that, we can move on.
I've got one, Greg, and this is just for the newer members out there. How do we respond to folks that say, well, they're obviously this text, took place. Police wouldn't lie, so therefore David must have had another phone, a burner phone, a different cell phone, another smartphone that you guys did not get when you got the phone records, and so that explains it. How do we respond to folks that come at it with that kind of a question?
I have that answer.
Yes, Sophia, what is it?
It was never taken into evidence.
Because
there were no other burner phones found at the crime scene. Nothing was ever taken into evidence. So.
Okay.
So if the police didn't have it, then how do we know that such burner phones ever existed?
Yeah.
Exactly.
They turned that house upside down.
Right.
Well,
you see it in the photo.
They missed so much.
Well, yeah,
they missed
a couple bullets.
Yeah, things in the carpet.
So Sophia, well, when we received the phone records with all the text messages and phone records, calls and things, that was everything. That was the full population, the full 100% of the phone data. There is no other phone number. There is no other smartphone. There is no other burner phone out there. That's a fact. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Correct.
So then the question comes back down to with Mr. Klokonos and Tommie Booth, something does not add up there, and that's what we're stuck on. Correct?
Is this just one more thing that they didn't follow up on?
Fair enough.
Well, see,
so that's a big misconnect. That's a big disconnect right there. So, gotcha.
Well, my question is okay, so who got them information? I mean, Mr. Klokonos here, where did he get the information? Who did you get it from? If he did find it somewhere, then how do you know it was tied to the drug deal? There's a lot of questions.
Well, that's what comes back to Sophia mentioned that in a typical case like this, to have that evidence to avoid all these theories that are floating around, you would obviously have a photograph or a screenshot, a photo of that message on that phone. Do you have any? It goes on to mention that he also asked, some where and when information to make the deal take place. Why is there no photographic evidence of any of this taking place? It's either got to be what Stephen says, that there's an informant involved feeding the bad information, or if that's not the case, Klokonos himself and Tommie Booth are either one of them or both of them are the bad guys making this all up to part of the cover-up involving Chris Peck, and knowing that none of these things took place. So we got serious issues here with either one of these scenarios.
Well,
does anybody I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say quickly, they also could be whoever told them this could be lying to them too.
Absolutely. But my question with this is has anybody done any background check? I don't want to say background checking; it seems a little shady. But has anybody really looked into Klokonos or Booth and actually seen their connections? If there's any connections to, let's say, directly to the captain, outside of work type of connections, or if there's any connections to, let's say, that reporter that was talking to Captain Bermel, or Bermel, one of those. Do we know if there's any connection to them and, let's say, Danny August Mason? Things like this. That would be my question, because I'm still looking into it myself. But if there's connections that way, then it also kind of explains the whole Logis system that was used for only a few members.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for the listeners, before we went live, they weren't aware of that Logis information. On the police reports of all the witnesses, only a handful had information regarding a Logis number, a Logis or Logis in the police file. Chris Peck was one of those that had an identifier code number next to his name. So he had an account set up somewhere on something in law enforcement, and he's one of the few people that had something. So who knows what his role was. This whole thing with the weed seems very convenient to the narrative, and it all could be made up anyway, along with the nice photographic images of the dresser of the weed to say, oh, this guy went off the deep end. It's all too perfect.
Well, on top of that, the other really strange thing, if we're looking at theories, so one of the theories is that he actually was taken out like in November, or at least it was all started in November. If we're looking at that, then this does, in a way, it does give a way to kind of cover up and kind of show that, okay, well, in December they were still active, they're still alive, you know, things are still going on. That'd be a way for them to use it that way. So
That's true.
So I don't know. I mean, that's kind of how I see it would kind of be tied in with it.
All right, we can move forward to the bathroom, the toilet and sink. Toilet. Here's the 4 bullet points. The master bedroom. The master bedroom toilet was not a source of water for paleo. The toilet seat lid was closed. Water level and inside of the toilet seat lid was wiped. All right, let's go on to here. So the photographic photos here is that the lid was closed. So when it first came out that paleo had no water dish, how did he survive with no food and water for 3 weeks? The skeptics all said that, well, he obviously ate the bodies to get the food. And then we said, well, what did he source to drink? What did he drink? Well, there's 3 toilets in the house. He must have been drinking the water. And so what we said when this whole thing first came out was, we need to get the photographic evidence to see if the lids were up or closed on those 3 toilets. If all 3 were closed, then we were up against a conundrum. Where did he get the water to even live? And so the photographs came out. The master bedroom showed obviously closed. The lid was closed. So now we're down to the 2 left.
Yep.
Or do you want to? And then we saw the one in the kid's bedroom had some waste paper or paper towels or diapers or something in there. And then the one in the basement was basically empty. They basically, so there may have been, if anything, the dog was in the basement drinking the water out of that toilet bowl, but probably not out the first 2.
Right, which does make sense, because that's where most of the dog feces is. You know, I mean, there is some next to the fireplace, next to the rear slider, but a lot of the dog feces is really down there in the basement. But this was a huge question, and so there was one little piece of dog feces in the master bedroom. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So the thing I'm still curious about was the basement door, was it open or closed when they got there?
According to the photos, if you look at the photos, it looks like it was open.
That's what I'm still trying to figure out, because I mean, some of those photos are showing the doors closed and.
Correct, because they do that similar to what we are seeing here, where they have this lid closed and then they show it, you know.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much all that we have to go on, because it's not mentioned in those reports. It's not mentioned with any doors, except for that rear slider. You know, they don't mention which doors in the house were open, which ones were closed. The only reason why I think that the one into the basement was open is because you would have to have that open in order to get, you would have to close that in order to get into those other rooms. So we know of how they cleared everything. They cleared the whole house first. So, but again, you know, you're right, because it's not 100% clear. But that is a big question, because if the basement door was closed, then obviously the dog would have had to have been trapped at some point and would have had to have been free at some point. So I've just always kind of gone with the theory that the dog had free reign throughout that whole house.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking over the photos right now to go and just double check. But I mean, it does appear you're right that it was when looking from the outside in at a specific angle, it does look like the basement door could have actually been open. But I'm still.
And that could be also how it was left by the killers. There's some speculation that for 2 of the 3 week period that the dog was in the basement with the door closed and was left to leave, resulting in the feces in the basement and the water gone out of the tank in the basement. And then for the final week, or when the killers left, opened up that door and either shut it again or left it open for the dog to roam around upstairs, resulting in just a handful of feces and nothing really to drink from when they found the dog. So there's specific theories floating around, but this water level is interesting because not only are there no water bowls, dishes in the house, there's no water bowls and water dishes. There's nothing for the dog. Typically, with the dog, you'd see some, and even if those would be empty. What we're saying here with the photographic evidence is that there wasn't even water bowls or water dishes in that house. And so some speculated too that it was one of those self-feeding big water tanks that would automatically keep refilling. But there's even no evidence of that. So this whole water thing with the dog is very interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is. And the only other thing I had on this toilet was just the actual water level and how low that this level is. You can kind of see where the level should have been. If this was in a toilet that was being used. I don't know. I mean, I can only go by the toilets I have here, and that I have here. I don't know if if it's different there, but this water level just seems very, very low. So
it definitely is.
I see them all over the place. Some are high, some are low. At 3 weeks of no use, it would go down a little bit anyway, perhaps. But we think it would be higher than that. But you can set the limit to how high you want the bowl to be on any toilet. So
interesting. Mm-hmm. And then because this toilet seat, the lid was white. That was another weird thing too, because I think in Raniya's bathroom, that toilet seat was also white, similar to the same way that this one was. So, if this toilet was clogged, also, wouldn't it look like this too?
Yeah.
If somebody flushed something down there, because we have this red substance here on this image. You have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you really have to zoom in to really see. But there's a red substance that we're going to see on the top of this lid here that is going to be similar to what we see in the sink. And so I was trying to figure out what is this, because when we first saw this, I mean, I thought, this is blood. This is blood. But they said there's no blood. There's no blood in this room here, in this bathroom. There's nothing that is labeled as blood. This isn't swab. This isn't anything. What is this?
It looks like pot residue, like actual burnt pot residue, and some of them look like there could have been like a little bit of burning potentially, like the one near the front, the little brown looking spot. Kind of looks like that could have been a little bit of a burnt spot potentially.
Yeah, there was a theory about bong water, that it was bong water that was poured out or something like that, but
I just think it was just like when he's got the little what are they called, the thing he's got in the trash, it's like the little like pipe cleaners. I've seen people use that actually when they're cleaning like their bong and all this kind of stuff. They use those types of things to go and get the little tiny areas, kind of scrub it. But I've also seen people use toothbrushes too, so there's that too.
Do you do that? Would they do that right before they're about to use their bong? Do they do that at the end of the usage? Any thoughts on that? Because again, that might help prove that they were in the process of either cleaning it because they had used it, or cleaning it because they were going to, and something happened. Because I don't know why you just leave it like this when there's no other bathroom that looks like this.
See, I had a friend back in high school, like his big thing, he was like, he liked to have things in there, like, he would be using it, and then he would use, put some more in occasionally and all this. I thought it was always weird, but I've seen other people do it multiple different ways. Like they clean it before, some they clean it after. So I'm not really sure. That'd be a good question to definitely ask, and I will be asking stoners. So I will be going out of my way to go and do that. I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, hey guys, can I digress 1 second to the toilet?
Yeah.
I didn't see the picture of the toilet downstairs, and how much water was left? Would you guess?
It's very similar to this image that we're seeing here, and I can pull that up too. But it's very similar. It's very, very low.
And that's the question: how much did the dog weigh?
25 pounds, I think.
Yeah, pretty light.
25 pounds. Yeah. Basically, is a 10-pound dog can go with a cup of water a day, and it says 25, so it's 2 cups a day. Yeah, pre-1993, a toilet bowl would hold 5 to 7 gallons. After 93, 3.5 gallons. So 16 cups in a gallon, right? 8 days, you start looking at that. If he was drinking 2 cups a day, that bowl should be empty.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means I'm thinking that sliding glass door also, guys. I think we entered the house after the murders.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, so they can't. Yeah, that dog was pretty healthy when they found it, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. No blood on him either. You know, no no body matter at all, like no brain, nothing.
There'd be dry blood on that dog's face, you know. So I think that they were. I don't think they were smart enough to. They may have thought that they could leave the dog in there and people would look at it, the dog could chew the hands off and everything else, which the dog didn't do. But I think that somebody was going in there that house maybe several times.
Oh yeah.
You know, if you don't feed that dog or whatever, it's going to start barking and yelping and everything. Mm-hmm. You know, no water, anything. That dog's going to, you know, whatever it is. So I just did a little research on that. So we got that kind of brings it in that these people re-entered the house. And of course, it was a deep state that they were in and out with one shot, one kill. But these guys going in and out, and that's what that slider was for. I'm sure of that.
But that's a huge risk, isn't it? To keep going back and forth. I mean,
well, it's like fire watch. It's like fire watchers. And arson. You know, you look in the crowd and you got a big fire. The guy's going to be standing there somewhere. Yeah. You know. And then these guys
they take enjoyment in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and these guys, Mason and these guys, you know, pretty brazen.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they, I mean, that's the thing. They didn't need to necessarily be right there in the crowd. I mean, they were watching it. I mean, they were keeping a very close eye. They knew they were going to be a part of it to some degree. Even then, they were giving out information so that way the cops could come back to them at any given moment. I mean, so somebody that's just, you know, they're like, oh my God, who killed my friend? And like, they're actually genuine and they're not actually tied in with it. Their behavior would be, well, not as suspicious as what these guys were. So,
sure. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on that one, or else we can move on to some of the other items that were found in the master bedroom.
No, I'm good.
All right. So we'll look at some of the other items in the master bedroom here. I just got a few things here pulled up. The first question from left to right: who slept on this side of that bed? Because Komel's fingerprints were on this gun safe. Now, if you know, where would you sleep? Would you want to sleep close to that gun safe? Would you want to have your wife sleep close to that gun safe? Because we have the two little hair bands here. Is that more evidence that it was Komel sleeping on this side? Is that why her?
See, I don't think so. I think it was David's side. I mean, I don't want to get into kind of like the TMI type of stuff, but I mean, you know, it's their bedroom. You know, hair ties can end up on his side too. But I think majority of the items here, they clearly look like they're David's stuff. Like he got his little wristbands, his little leather wristbands. He got his knife. He got his watch. You know, his pipe. You know, I would argue and even then, I mean, if we're going to look at it, let's be honest. I mean, Komel has some experience with the gun. David's, I would argue, because he's got more training, more of a background with it, I would argue, just going on a limb there, he's probably more proficient with it. He would go and be on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So, that's my assumption here.
Dan, Sophia, any thoughts on who might have?
Yeah, I think it does. This is Dan. I do think it's David's side. Although the detractors of this could possibly come back and say, typically a husband and a wife, the male will sleep on the side of the bed nearest the door as a safety measure or as a protector is typically the case. And then the wife's always on the other side to kind of tuck back on the other side of the bed for safety reasons. So you may hear that as well. Just wanted to point that out. But this does look like David's books, his humor, his books next to his bed. Those wouldn't be books I don't think Komel will be reading. But
and just on a little side note on that also, the other thing too is, I mean, it could come down to who's more of a heavy sleeper. Just to kind of throw it just kind of in perspective. So my wife, she sleeps close to the door. I'm a heavier sleeper. So she would wake me up. That's basically how it would work. So maybe David was just like a really heavy sleeper, Komel's a lighter sleeper. You know, I mean, you can always throw that in there as well as part of that discussion, because, I mean, it does happen. I mean, I'm an example. So...
There's a few other items, and of course most of these items here that we see are going to be pushed onto the floor, so a lot of these items do end up on that floor. To have that knife there, you know, is also another big thing, because the knife is never mentioned. So now we have at least 2 knives in this house, one right under this gun safe, and then obviously the other one found in the living room. So if, you know, are they both David's knives? Is just one David's knife? This watch is obviously a man's watch, so I don't believe that's Komel's watch. I'd be shocked if it was. Looks like a gun holster here too, so that was the only other thing there. But yeah, there's a lot of books and stuff like that here. But I was just curious about that, because if you look at some of the photos to try to see where, you know, to see, okay, who slept on what side, I was just curious about that. Me personally, I would want to sleep closest to the gun safe, but just with these hair tie things, that was the only thing that made me think, okay, why are those hair ties there? Wouldn't those belong to David's wife? Or where's this Vicks vapor rub too? So that was the only other thing, you know. I don't know.
I mean,
was there only one nightstand?
Yeah.
In the bedroom?
Yeah, there's
it's
only
very possible, because I do this. I'll go to bed with my ponytail, with my hair up in a ponytail, and then I take it off and I put it on the nightstand. And it's very possible she could have just handed it to David and said, "Hey, put this over here."
Right. Right.
But I mean, also, I mean, she was dealing with was it rheumatoid arthritis, wasn't it?
Mhm.
So I mean, Vicks vapor rub could be. I mean, I don't know if I would use that for that. I would use that more for like a sleeping thing. But I mean, could that also, is that kind of like an icy hot? I'm not really too familiar with that, so so it's like a serious question for me.
I wouldn't use it for that.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing I would use it for is if I have trouble breathing, basically. So maybe somebody had a cold or something like that. But because of this dust area, it does seem like there were other things on this table too.
Oh yeah.
And it does seem like they did have like a cold, or maybe had the flu at one time, because if you look in the guest bathroom, you'll see a thing of like Breathe in there also. It's an essential oil.
Yeah.
And we use that here. So. And you see the Kleenexes throughout the house too.
Lots of Kleenexes, lots of paper towels, that's true.
I mean, it was winter, so I mean that's generally a time when people are getting sick anyway. So.
Yeah.
Obviously, not that the cold is getting people sick, obviously, but you know, let's make that clear. But
I mean, there were only a few other items that stood out in this room here. There was a let's see if I can find that photo. But there was a photo of a notepad next to a piece of paper that was next to their bed. So that was one of the things that kind of stuck out some people here. Let's see if I can pull that up. But the other thing was this dog feces here too. So there's just one little area where this dog was. Now, for dog owners who, you know,
BCA 4567, right?
Yeah, BCA 4517, and you can see where there's really not that much there, just a couple pieces of dog feces here. So it's like, okay, why are there only a few here? This was where the dog laid when the dog was in their room. I don't know. I mean, does this look healthy, unhealthy? Obviously, not tested or anything like that, but it was just kind of strange. It doesn't look like very healthy food either.
No. I mean, to me, I mean, I'd have to look into it a little bit further, but I mean, just kind of off the top of my head, I would say it kind of looks a little like dehydrated.
Dehydrated.
Yeah. That'd be my guess.
Yeah. And then, you know, you only see pillows on the bed. You only see pillows on one side. Where are the other pillows? And who, again, it goes back to who's sleeping on which side. Whose socks are these that we see there on the ground? Are they male socks? Because the other thing is, the other reason why I thought, well, maybe David was sleeping on this side is because he doesn't have any socks on, whereas his wife does. So she's found with socks on. David isn't. Are these two socks that we're seeing here, are those David's socks? So I was wondering about that. And let's go back here. I think it's in the other. I'm trying to look for the notepad. I think it's in the Apple Valley records here.
Yeah, it's a BCA 4567.
Okay, because it's also DSC 0084 and 0085 where you can see, and the socks are moved again. Things move everywhere.
Oh, of course.
I mean, these are early photos of where this is, and then so when you compare the photos that we got from the Apple Valley compared to the BCA, you can see. I mean, it's just so many different things that are moved here. But here is that notepad and the pen that just seems so out of place here. Again, like I don't know what this is doing here. Was this on their bed and kind of thrown off when something happened? Again, I don't really know, but it's just a very odd place, and I'm glad. I think Derek was one who pointed that out. That it just seems odd that would be there. So.
Oh yeah.
Those were kind of the only other things I had for the other items. I don't know if you guys noticed any other weird items in that room, but that was basically it. I mean, you have some of these photos where things look moved, but that's because the investigators, even in this image, in DSC 0087, you can see the investigator here, and they're moving things. You know, you'll see the vacuum is inside, and then other photos it's actually outside, which I think is good that they're taking photos when they move things. Obviously the photos that they give us, it's not really, they don't put that into the proper context, but so it's hard to tell all of this stuff that we're seeing here in this image, what has been moved by the investigators, as opposed to was this how it looked when they first came into the crime scene. So that's been kind of hard to figure. That's why I didn't focus too much on a lot of the clothing and stuff like that, because I don't know if this was moved by David and his wife or if this was moved by the investigators, because there are photos of these doors closed too. So.
Well, the other one I think that's pretty interesting is when we're looking at the little the attic. Like if you look at the before they actually went up there, you can see. I mean, it looks a little different. Like it looks like. Let me bring it up real quick so I can kind of describe it better. So when we're looking at it, it looks like it's tightly closed. And this is when, like, you know, BCA and all this is in there. So this is all before they got the warrant to go up. And when we're looking at the ones where they actually go up, let me bring it real quick. Man, it looks like they just kind of, it was open when they got there. It's kind of what it looks like.
Right, but that was all open afterwards. So those ones were all one month after.
Well, exactly, and that's why I thought it was a little weird with it. Was okay, so did Chris Klein and those guys, did they just leave it open, or did they close it again when they came back down?
They must have left it open, because when the police went back there, all of this was open. There was a ladder there that should not have been there.
Exactly.
They didn't look up in that attic. So, but going back, yeah, that'd be a good thing to see, because when they, in the police reports, I think they say that that attic door was closed.
Well, and that leads me to the next question. See, as we're talking about the ladder now, where was the ladder from?
Good question. I don't know where that.
See, that's the thing. I'm looking around and I'm trying to see if I can see it.
Right.
And that's the thing, is it from the house, or is it somebody else's ladder?
They had a whole month, so, but yeah, I mean, why would I bring a ladder in there unless you know exactly what you're looking for? But
I'm not seeing one in the basement and the garage. I'm looking in there right now. I don't recall seeing it though.
maybe look next to the washer and dryer in the very, very back of the basement. Maybe it's somewhere back there, but other than that, I have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. It's just like, where'd the ladder come from?
Where'd the ladder come from? I never thought of that. Another great question.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it there either. Yeah, definitely not seeing it.
Well, that's
Weird.
interesting because our next, I think our next podcast is gonna. I think we're there. I think we're gonna talk about item 53 and item 57, and we're gonna talk about that attic and what was there, what looks different, and what they saw, what they didn't see. So that may be a good place for us to kind of stop here, unless you guys have any other thoughts on the master bedroom.
No, I think we pretty much covered it all.
Yeah, nothing else on my end.
Steven?
No, I think we just keep chugging along for the good fight, and then we'll talk about. We'll go off the arrow. We'll talk about a couple options that we're thinking about.
Sure. All right, Steven. I also want to mention your book. Tell us a little bit about your book here. This is what kind of brought you. This is how we got in contact through a separate case here. But I think reading this book, I'm just like, this needs to be its own film. So tell us a little bit about this here, since we got you here.
It was in 1999. I was a bail bondsman in the San Francisco Bay Area and also up in the Motherlode, California. And it was the time that the Yosemite sightseers were murdered. And I bailed out a fella named Paul Candler on a bail bond, just $23,000 bond. And as I was looking for him when he jumped bail on me, it led me into the Yosemite sightseer murder case, and everything was pointing in that direction. And law enforcement was less than vigilant, and there was some cover-ups and everything, and they decided to go ahead and indict and charge and sentence after jury and such. That we had two cases. There was a federal case and a state case. That I said, no, I don't believe that one guy did it, and it led me into the Yosemite sightseer murder investigation. And I decided to write a book about it, and got a lot of press and such. But there's still major question. Even law enforcement involved with it later on contacted myself and mostly anonymously, but that there was more than one killer. And I did, Greg, I just there's a production company out of New York that just got a hold of me. They just got a development deal with Hulu. It'd be the first documentary or any questioning of the lone killer theory. So they actually have a development deal. I've been speaking with them, and it's like, hopefully we'll bring it out for the first time ever to question law enforcement. It's a 3-part miniseries, and so that's what has happened since our last podcast, my last podcast with Dan. So that's looking pretty good.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. The book is called Ultimate Prey, and it's on Amazon. It's an ebook and also paperback.
Awesome.
And I started it. I haven't gotten very far into the book, but oh my gosh, you are an amazing writer.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, the book really starts out, it really draws you into it, and you're just kind of, it's similar to David's script, too, where you're just kind of in this world, you're not exactly sure what's happening, there's something bad happening, and it takes a lot of twists and turns from then, so, well, that's great,
yeah.
Man. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's why I really, when you guys got a hold of me to start looking at my insight on the Crowley case, and just I'm a private investigator now in San Diego, and I'm handling a couple of suspicious death cases all of a sudden, and I'm back in the private investigator side of it, and it's just amazing how law enforcement just they don't get it. They just ignore exculpatory evidence. They feel exculpatory evidence isn't worth anything, and then we start looking at exculpatory evidence, which does mean something, and it's the same thing. And that's what our group is so great about is, we're a cold case group here. We have the time, and we all got a few brains, and we put it together, and we start questioning, how these, cases are coming about, and I think it's a good thing because there's a lot of people that have questions, and I think we can help that along. Yeah.
All right, and William, let us know where we can follow your work too.
So I've got a YouTube channel. I don't actually have my own custom URL yet. Hopefully someday. But I'm also on Twitch. You can look me up at twitch.tv/Strange Investigations. I've also got a oh man, I'm just blanking on it. I got a Discord server as well, and I cover everything from like just really peculiar cases. I've got an archive for all sorts of different things going on, including ARGs. So if you guys aren't familiar with those are basically like alternate reality games. So it's one of those rabbit hole type of things. You look into it and it might look really, really like completely correct and all this, and this is what it is, but it's really not. Like look up the Finder's Cult, for instance. You can look that up, and huge rabbit hole. But no, there's those are my main ways to find me. You can also see me on Rumble, and you can see me on Odyssey and BitChute as well.
Cool.
And
I had to branch out a bit.
Yeah, and you've done what, like 9 videos so far on this, and I think by the time people listen to this podcast, you'll have done 10.
Yeah.
All right, Sophia, any final words here about anything that we've covered today?
Just for everybody to keep on digging and fighting the good fight. There's so much coming out, and that's about it.
All right, Dan, you want to take us out? Let people know where they can follow your stuff. I know you can go to uglytruth.info for more.
Yes, www.uglytruth.info is my site, and Twitter at DMHennen, Hennen. That's where my stuff is at, and on Facebook as well. We've got about 3,900 members in the Group for Justice for David Crowley and family, and it's growing every day, so that's a good place to go. A lot of information out there, a lot of it changing. Even though we're 6 years on, there's still more people coming with new sets of eyes, so podcasts like this are very good to have. Greg's book is still the definitive source on this topic as far as a reference, so please get your hands on the book. And it's more of a reference. It's not a book to be read. It's a book to be grab a pen when you're with it and circle things and underline things and bookmark things and come back to them later. It's a great reference book. And once again, this is episode number 14. So we'll keep plugging through here this book because we all learn something new each time we do a podcast like this. Thanks again for listening, though, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to stop this recording here.